Welcome back. In previous session, we have explored bind mounts. So bind mounts allowed container to access file directly from host machine. So this is one of the good solution, or not good solution, but this is one of the solution to make our data persistent, but it has some limitations. We also understood that. What are those limitations? So this depends on host machine file system, so that make the container less portable and harder to manage when these containers moving from one host machine to another host machine or maybe different environment. Now, to solve these problems, Docker provides a better way to persist data, and that is Docker volume. So what is Docker volume? Let's understand this. Docker volume is a special storage location that is managed by Docker independent of host file system. So what we have noticed in the bind mount, so we have the specific directory and that a container refer, right? But in the Docker volume, what Docker do? Docker create a special volume, and that volume it's makes available for the container. So that is completely independent of host machine file. So as I said, unlike bind mount, which directly map host directory to the container, Docker volume is fully controlled by Docker. Yes, so Docker itself fully control the Docker, so it make them more reliable, portable, and secure. How? Now let's understand this. So there's couple of features of the Docker volume that make it different from the bind mount. Let's understand this one by one. So first is data location. So in bind mounts, what we see, so a container refer to the specific folder on the host machine. Whereas when we use Docker volume, then it store the data at the certain location that is managed by Docker. Now understand this. So let's say if we have this host machine and here we have the container, but who is creating this container? Is created by the Docker, right? Docker. Now Docker is going to manage the location. So if this Docker is managing location, let's say here somewhere. Now if this container goes somewhere, right? So it will have the Docker. Now if Docker is managing this volume, let me change color of my pencil. So if this Docker managing this location, then this Docker also know what is the location, right? So it's become easy to manage through the Docker because now Docker is managing this, right? In the bind mount, as a user, we are specifically specifying the path, right? But here Docker is managing it, so this make the more reliable solution and also portable. So when Docker itself managing, right, so it didn't matter this is this host or that host or maybe any environment. So now Docker know where what is the location of the data, right? So that's make it more portable. Next is the security. So as we already understood, when we use bind mounts, then container directly access data on the host file, right? So this is not secure, and there is only two way. One way, we make the complete read and write options for the container. Another is the only read option. But in case of the Docker volume, as Docker manage the volume, so it has access control, and we have more control, different level of the control that prevent unintended access of the data. So these are some useful feature of the Docker volume. Now let's understand how this works in practically. So there is three stages. First stage, we have to go and create a Docker volume itself. So in the bind mount, what we do? We basically go and just manage the path, right? We manage the path of the different directory on the host machine and the container. But here Docker create and manage the volume. So for that, what we need to do, we need to create a volume manually. So using the Docker command, Docker volume, and create then the volume name. Similar the way we have been creating our network. So what we are doing here, using Docker, we are creating the volume with this name, and we can of course go ahead inspect this and it will have all the information. Now once this my volume is the volume created by the Docker, then this volume we can use within our container. How? This is the next step, using volume in the container. So for that, so again command remain the same, but you see here, so docker run d, again we are passing the minus v argument, and here we are saying my volume. So this is my volume, what created, we have created using the docker, right? Now docker know my volume. Now my volume we are mapping to the app data, and this is the container path, right? So now we are mapping container path to the my volume which we have created. Now this is the container name. Now let's understand this once again. So all data from the app data that is in the container, right, this will be persist where on the my volume. So this will be persist inside the my volume, and this is managed by the docker. So even if container stopped, crashed, restart, data remain available and can be used by another container as well. How? Now let's understand this. So here we can share same volume, same storage with the multiple container. So here let's say we have the backend container, okay, so that's writing the log, and we have the monitoring container that is reading the log. So now as this is managed by the docker, this volume is managed by the docker, now docker knows, correct? So here this first container, if you see, we are saying okay, this is the share log. So this is again we need to create the volume, right? Docker volume, create volume name, and volume name is shared log, right? So this shared log here for the backend app, we are mapping var log to the shared log, right? Let me delete this. So here if for the backend app, so var log here, var log we are mapping to the share log. Now another container monitoring tool, now this is accessing here from the same volume which the log, so data is getting put it here, so this is being accessed by the other container, right? So now this makes the data shareable across the container. So these are the two steps we need to follow when we need to create and manage volume using the docker. Of course once you do that, if you want to remove this, so we can remove using docker volume rm and delete this. Now again let's look into some important feature of the docker volume. So first feature is, just give me a moment. Well, now let's look into some features of the docker volume. First is persistent data location, right? So here docker ensure that this data remain persist, do not lost even if container stop or restart, because now this is managed by docker and docker know this. Now we have docker managed location. So this is docker managed location, so we should not separately storing data on our host machine, right? Next is this also enable cross container sharing. So now this is managed by the docker, so this location or this volume could be shared with the multiple containers. And next is the better security. We also understood it, now this is managed by the docker, so it has the better access control. Well, so this is pretty much I wanted to cover in this session. So how docker volume is better than and different than bind mounts. In next session, we are going to do hands-on and understand both bind mounts and Docker volume more practically. Thank you so much. See you in the next session.